All right, so today we are working with chart objects, seeing what does it take for us to automate building charts and so forth. And it's kind of fun. We're building on an example that we did before. So we're starting where we left off with the census data. So you may remember this data set where we took in the census data and it was pretty hard to work with. And we built a little tool that would allow us to compare side by side different counties. So we choose a county and it pops in here. We choose another county and their data pops in, and choose another one and so forth. Okay, so we are literally picking up where we left off in that example. And what we'd like to do is we would like to adjust this so that it's not just looking at these numbers for comparison, but we're able to chart those. We want to be able to build a chart that shows that as well. So we'd like to make it so that, maybe when we like select here and select a row, we press Control-Shift-C for chart. It will just put a chart here for that particular one. And then do the next one and the next one and so forth. So we can just kind of pick the line that we want to chart, Control-Shift-C, and have it build a nice chart for us there. Got it? You understand where we're headed? All right. I don't know how to build a chart with VBA. Well, I do, but I'm guessing you don't. And so how would we get the code to build the chart? Yeah, just record ourselves doing it. Yeah, record ourselves doing it. So I've got a few set here. I'm going to go ahead and pre-select the data that I'm interested in charting. In fact, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight these top two because I'm going to want those for my labels, my data labels, and then I'll pick another one of these rows here. I have that data selected, and now I'll just build a bar chart on this. So let me get myself recording. So developer, record a new macro. Macro 3 is a great name. We'll go in and edit it for sure. And I'm just going to do insert. I'll choose the simplest two-dimensional column chart. And that made a beautiful little chart for me. I may even move it just so I get the code that it takes to move that chart. And then I will stop recording. I think developer, stop recording. Let's go take a look at the code that generated. So it looks like we're in module 3 now. Wow, we've done quite a bit here. Here's macro 3. Why don't we just go ahead and call this build chart? In fact, I probably should have, when I was recording it, I probably should have put a shortcut key on it. So we'll put a shortcut key on it here in just a minute. We'll take a look at what it recorded. So first of all, it says here, this is a little bit strange here. So active sheet, no problem. That's referring to whichever sheet is active. Now it's saying there's a collection on that called shapes. I think we've played with the shapes collection once before, but it's the stuff that's like not in a cell, but it's like sitting on top of the worksheet. So if you put a button or an image or a shape or a text box onto your worksheet, then it is in the collection of shapes. And so we are referring to the shapes collection, and we're calling a method of that collection called add chart to. Oh, what's the difference between add chart to and add chart? No idea. But apparently they thought, you know what, we need to make a better one of these. It's like called it add chart to. And we give it apparently a type number. I don't know what the type number means. We could probably look that up. And we tell it's going to be a clustered chart. And then we select it. The interesting thing to me here is that we are working with the shapes collection. It's a shape. And here's the thing. A chart does not go onto a worksheet. A chart goes into a shape, and the shape goes onto the worksheet. And so that's why we're calling a method called add chart of the shapes collection, because it's going to create a shape, and then it's going to put a chart in the shape. So like the things we put onto worksheets are shapes, and it turns out this one can hold a chart. And then after it's selected, it's going to say, okay, great, whatever chart is selected, is active, then we're going to do some things to set the source data with it and so forth. Okay, so that looks pretty good, but I'd like to simplify. I would like to adjust things a little bit here. So let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to create 2 objects. dim1 is going to be called a shape, SHP, as a, SHP, as a shape object. And I'm going to use that to hold the reference to the object that is holding my chart. I'm also going to declare one called CHRT, which is going to be a reference to the chart that's inside the shape. So we've got two different objects, and we'll have to manipulate them both. We'll be manipulating them both. And so I would like to get these two variables connected onto those. All right, so let's look at this line right here. Someone help me with what code I would do to bind my shape variable onto this, the shape that gets created by this add chart to method. Anyone want to take a stab at that? Like, what's the first keyword I'm going to use on this line to bind an object variable onto an object? It's 3 letters long. Set, very good. I'll say set the name of my variable, SHP, equal to, Now, I don't need this whole line, so I'm going to have to take something off of this line. Can you figure out what it is? I use set to bind an object variable onto an object. And so whatever comes on the right-hand side needs to identify an object. And I'm doing a little bit more than identifying an object here. Do you see what it is? And I've got to take something out. Yeah, the dot select. So what's happening here initially is it's saying, hey, this is identifying an object, it's creating a new object, and then it's referring to that object, and then we're selecting that object. I don't want to select the object, so I'm just going to get rid of select. The whole reason it selects it, well, maybe not the whole reason, but one of the reasons it selects it is so it can use the shortcut to the active chart to be able to refer to the chart. So now I've got my shape object that is holding the shape that the chart was created into. That looks great. Now, what I need to do is I'd like to bind onto the chart that is inside of that shape. So let me set CHRT equal to my shape, SHP dot, and it has a property called chart. So if the shape holds the chart, then the chart property is just a reference to that chart. The shape and the chart are both, they're allocated in memory. They're taking up memory. They're built there. And so the shape object has a property that just keeps track of where the chart is, and that property is called shape. It's just literally, it's just the memory address of where the chart is. And so now this will let me bind on to, so I've now got my chart set up. So now if I want to refer to the shape, we've got SHP. If I want to refer to the chart, CHRT, and that looks great. I love this little thing that they've done here. So the macro recorder says, we don't want these lines to be too wide. You won't be able to read them on your screen. And so if a line gets too wide, we're going to break it and put it onto multiple lines. And so they said, wow, this line is getting pretty long. And so we better break this line. So what we're going to do is we're going to add 2 characters so we can break this line so that we can put the 1 character that belongs on that line on the next line. So that's crazy. I'm going to bring that back. And active sheet shapes. Oh, interesting. Okay. So now remember this, then after I created that chart, I moved the chart. And so this is calling an increment left method. That's not how I hoped it would record. That's okay. But you'll notice that we've got a problem here. And that problem is that the way that we're referring to the shape is we're saying, look at the active sheet. And then in the shapes, out of all the shapes, we're talking about the one called chart 1. What do you think my next shape is going to be named when I run this macro again? Probably chart 2, but whatever it is, it's not going to be chart 1. And so this code is going to move the first created chart on my sheet. So what am I going to change here to make it actually increment to something different? What do I put here? Yep. Oh, we might be able to figure out how to guess what the name is going to be. But this right here, this is identifying, like when I recorded this macro, this is identifying the shape that was created way up here. That was trying to get back to the shape. So how can I refer to that shape? Yeah, that's the whole reason I've created that variable to hold the shape, is when I want to refer to it, I've got a direct reference to that object. So we'll just change this to SHP. And the truth is, instead of incrementing the left, because this is moving it from where it happened to be created, I'm just going to set the left property. SHP.left equals 250. I don't know where that's going to put it, but that'll give me a starting place and I can adjust from there. And the top, I'll put the top at something like 100. We're going to have to get a lot more sophisticated about what we do with this, because the whole point is we don't want these charts to get created on top of each other. We want to kind of get them, when I create the first one, I'd like to put it somewhere, and then we'd like to get the next one to move down and the next one move down and so forth. Okay. Now, other thing that we have here is we're dealing with the source data. And the truth is, I think that it's going to build the source data based on what is selected when I tell it to create the chart. I don't think I need this line, but I'm not positive. So I'm going to comment it out for now. I'm going to see what happens if I run this. I'm going to start off again by hand by selecting the data that I want to build the chart for, and then we'll run this and see how it comes. In fact, I'm probably going to, before I even do that, I'm going to go bind Control-Shift-C onto this. So I'll put a little note that that's what I'm doing. Control+Shift+C runs this macro. I'll come back to my worksheet. I will choose View, Macros, Build Chart, Options, and put a capital C in there. Build a chart. And cancel. All right. I'm going to just maybe put this one where I know that next one's not going to go. And I'll choose a different range. And press Control-Shift-C. Ah, wonderful. So it built the chart. Oh, and that's where it put it. That's apparently that is 100 down and 250 over. I think I want to go more like 600 over for now, and then we'll make that dynamic. So instead of 250, let me try 600. I'll try that again. Control-Shift-C. That's 600. 800. Shift-C. There we go. So at least that's coming outside of where my data is. Now, because we've got a shortcut key set up on this, it's going to be really easy for us to make lots of charts while we're doing this development. And it's going to be kind of a hassle to delete them. So why don't we make a macro to delete all the charts off this sheet? Sub, delete, chart. If I want to look across all of the objects in a collection, what's my best loop for that? What's the loop that's just made for that? A for each loop. Ooh, when you start deleting objects out of a collection with a for each loop, that could cause some issues. Let's give it a shot. And if the for each loop doesn't work well for us, we'll switch it to a for next loop, which we know we can make work. So let's just say, let's dim CHRT as an object, make it as a chart object. No, just as a shape. I'm going to call it SHP. Dim SHP as a shape. Because I'm going to delete the shape that holds the chart, and the chart will go with it. For each SHP in active sheet, or this will be my, yeah, we'll call it active sheet. That's fine. ACTIVESHET, active sheet dot shapes. And let me just print off the names of those and see if we're getting to the right objects. Debug.print shp.name. Okay, so I should be able to run that. And yeah, uh-oh. I've got 4 charts and I've got a drop down. I have a drop down. So yeah, this is data validation. I didn't know that was made of shape. I guess it is. Apparently it's a shape. So it's a good thing that we checked before we just started deleting things. I would have deleted my drop down. So how can I tell if the shape that I'm looking at is holding a chart? Remember, it has a chart property. I don't know what's going to happen when we get to the one that doesn't have a chart, but let's just see what that prints. Clear this off. I'll run this again. Object doesn't support this property or method. Let me just print the name of it. Oh, I don't have the name. It's chart 1. How did it print chart 1? Debug.print, shape.name. That whole line should have failed. It shouldn't print half of that line. Interesting. So it looks like it. What was the error? Object doesn't support this property or method. Shape.chart. Okay, let's see if it has chart. Oh, good. So it looks like there's a property called has chart that we can use to tell if the shape is holding a chart. Let's just run this again and see if it looks. Yeah, so we're getting back a -1 for all these chart objects, and we're getting back a 0 for this one. Remember that in the world of Boolean variables, 0 is false, any other number is true. But if you take a Boolean value true and convert it into an integer, which is what's happening here, it's going to go to -1. Why does it go to -1 instead of +1? I don't have a good answer for that. I bet there is a good answer for that, but I don't know what it is. So, and that's going to be, that'll be equivalent to true or false. So let's do this. Let's say if our shape has a chart, then chp.delete. What I'm worried about here is that if I'm working through this collection and I delete the first one, I'm modifying the very object collection that I'm running this loop on. So I'm not entirely sure this is going to work. I think it will. Let's give it a shot. That should delete our charts now. Yeah, it worked out okay. All the charts are gone. Looks like my dropdown is still here. I think I'm going to go ahead and assign a shortcut key of Control-Shift-Delete to this one. Control-Shift-D to this one. Put a capital D in there so I can delete my charts easily. I'm going to select some data, Control-Shift-C. I'll make some charts. Control-Shift-D now should wipe them out. Excellent. Okay, how are we feeling about what we've done so far? Just show me 0 to 5. 4, 5, 4, 4s and 5s. Okay, good. Now, you've noticed that to make these charts build correctly, I've had to select the data range. I don't want to select the data range. I want my program to select the data range. So, any thoughts? Someone talk me through. I think the way we're going to say it is user is going to be somewhere on the line they want to build the chart for. So then what are we going to have to do to figure out, what information will we have to do to figure out what's the data range to select? So we've got the data selected when we build the chart and it builds it with the right data. Don't have to tell me the whole thing. Give me something. Go ahead. Ah, okay. So what you're saying is we don't know how many columns there's going to be for this. So we've got to come to column E when that, or F when that's where the data ends. But if there's more, we want to go a little further. But what you're suggesting is do a control right arrow to figure out where that is. And that will work really well, generally speaking, unless someone gets the idea that it's a good thought to make a chart when there's only one value. Because if there's one value here and I hit control right arrow, it takes me all the way to the end. So let's just do it the opposite. Let's start here and control left arrow to come back, and that'll show us where the last column is. Okay, so why don't we make a variable for that in our build chart? Let's call it last call as an integer. And let's just do that first thing. Actually, let's go ahead and make sure that our compare sheet is selected. So out of all the worksheets, the one labeled compare. Dot activate or select, either one will do it. Activate. And then let's go ahead and do it from on our first row. Now, anytime I'm trying to bump into the data to find out where the data ends, I've got a potentiality of, like, if I was missing some data here and I did a control left arrow, I'd come in too far. So, but I'm pretty sure we're never going to have a blank name for the state up here. So let's just do that control left arrow on row number 2. So last call equals active sheet. Well, it'll just default to the active sheet. So cells, row number 1, column number, columns.count. That'll be that's how many columns there are. So it'll be the very last column number. From here, we'll just say end XL2 left. Then we'll ask for the column of that, and that should be the last column because that will go to the cell that has the data, and that's what I need. LUMN. So that should give me my last column. Okay, so I think that's the hard part. But now I have 3 rows that I have to select. And I think this might be the first time that we've tried to activate or do anything with a discontiguous range in this class. So let's go ahead and select the range that has the data on it. And so whatever row that we're on, this will be the row of the active cell. I think we'll only need it once, so that should be okay. So let's go ahead and make a variable for the data row as a long integer. And then our data row is just going to be the active cell dot row. ACTIVE cell dot row. And it's always going to start in column 2. So I think we've got the information that we need. Now I'm going to do this. There's several ways that we could do this. The one way to build a discontiguous range, is to build the string that would identify the discontiguous range. So like if you want to select this discontiguous range with a string, we're not going to do it this way, but let me just show you. Let me say range. And I could say A1 through B10, comma, D1 through E5. So by having a comma and having 2 ranges in there, or individual cells separated by a comma, then that will select that discontiguous range. So that's one way that we could do it. We could figure out the string that would do it. Another way that we could do it, the way that I was about to say isn't going to work all that well. But I'm going to show you, I will show you yet another way from this one. And that one is going to require us to have a range object. So dim data, let's call it data as range. So now that I've got my two variables here that data Ezra, I got my two variables that let me know which row we're on, which column we end in, and I know we start in column 2. I'm going to set data equal to the range that actually to the cells, starting cell, ending cell. So range, and I'm going to give it 2 cells, where to start and where to end. Cells, row number, data row, column number 2, that's where my range starts, and it ends on the same row, column number last call. I'm going to run it to here, and then we're just going to check to see what that range is. So stop. I'll go ahead and run. What is my active cell? My active cell is row 13. Let me just take a look at data.address. So that figured A13 to B13. Oh, I don't want to start in column 1. I want to start in column 2. My last column, oh, I only have one row of data. So let me get my data back to where I want it. I'm going to select a few more of these. I think I'm going to come into Utah. Utah was closer to the end of the alphabet than it is. All right, we got Salt Lake County. We got San Pete County. Let's get Utah County and Davis County. All right, now I'm on row 13. I'm expecting to get a range that is B13 through E13. I'll stop my code, run it again, and look at the address. There we go. So B13 to E13 is the range that I've got so far. So far I've got 1. It's not discontiguous, it is a contiguous range. Now what I'd like to do is I would like to essentially concatenate onto that range another range. So let me just go ahead and identify that range here. So range, same thing, I'm going to use 2 cells. Like maybe I'll do the first one with range B1 because it always starts in B1 as the first cell in my range. And the second one is going to be cells, row number 2, column number last call. Last call. Range. It looks like I have one too many parentheses at the end. There we go. And so that is from B1 to E2. That's the other range that I want to have in my discontiguous range, B1 to E2. Okay. Turns out there is a method built into VBA that allows me to concatenate 2 ranges. To take in a range and essentially just add another range onto it as a discontiguous range. And that's the union statement. And so I am going to say here that I'm going to set data equal to something else. And what is it going to be? The union of data and this other range identifier. And I think you can put up to like 30 different, you can union together up to 30 different ranges in one statement. So I could have done this without binding it on to another variable. But if you have to do more than 30, you can do more than 30 discontiguous ranges in a single range object. You just can't do it all at one step with the union. You could do it in 2 steps or more the way we've done it here. So now if I run that and then I ask for the address of my data range, I now have that discontiguous range. The one where my data that I'm trying to graph, and then my labels are here. And once I've got that done, it's going to be a simple matter to say data.select. And that should get the data selected that I want to be able to build that chart. So this is a little bit more advanced than we've done before with range objects, but it's a powerful technique to be able to work with discontiguous ranges. How are you feeling about discontiguous ranges? 3, 5, 5, 3, 4, 5, okay. All right, well, I think if I get rid of this stop now, and then just run this the rest of the way out, it should build that chart. So yeah, I'm getting that chart built and it looks about right. 7, the next one's a little bit lower, the next one's higher than all of them, and the next one's second highest. Yeah, that's the right one. So what should our next task be for this chart? Probably a title on the chart. I think you said label. Yeah. You enunciated it quite well, even though it was silent. It was label, you said, right? Yeah. Okay, so let's just go ahead and figure out how to put the chart label on here. And what I'm going to put the text from A1 as the label of the chart, or the text from whatever's in column A. So let's just see what it takes to put the label on that chart. And maybe I'll put it down here. So I'm going to put another stop statement in here, and I'll run my code to this location. All right, so the chart has been created and it's called CHRT. Let me just come into the immediate window. I'll do it down here. I want to set the title of the chart. So chart dot. The very first time that I tried to manipulate the title of a chart through VBA, the internet had already been invented by that time. And I knew that I could look it up, but I thought, you know what, I'm just going to find it. And so I just started looking through the properties to find the title. What would you look for? If you were guessing, what would you guess? Take a guess. Oh, people, it's the title of the chart. Take a guess. That's exactly what I first searched for. I went down to title, down to the T's, QRST. It's got to be called title. And there's only one with a T, and that's the tab. That's no good. I think I looked for about 10 minutes. It seemed like 10 minutes. It wouldn't take me 10 minutes so I could read them in order, but I didn't go in order. Before I found out it's called chart title. And then I thought, oh, easy. Okay, chart title. I'm just going to put in some text here. Hi. So let's just see if that puts that on my chart title. No, it doesn't support this property or method. What? That's terrible. Anytime, like when you're kind of guessing and playing around here, after you get to the one that you think you need, the next thing is hit a dot. Because if you hit a dot and it brings up more choices, you're not just writing text to it. It's an object. Oh, so how do I set like the label of the chart title? Oh, there it is, dot text. And then that one, I think I can put some text into. Okay, that likes that, okay. Did it change the chart? It did change the chart title. Excellent. Okay, so we don't want to actually put high on it. What do I want to put? I want to put some range, cells, row number, data row, column number 1, dot value. And that now puts the title, makes that the title of my chart. Resident population, American Indian, Alaskan, and Native alone. Estimate, 2008. Mission accomplished. Oh, all right. What should we do next? It's like choose your own adventure. Build your own chart. Anything else you want to do to this chart? Change the color of the bars. I don't know how to do that, but I know how to find out how to do that. Let's give it a shot. You mean them to all be the same color still, but to be a different color. Okay. I don't know. Let me just see if I can do that. I'm not really much for charts. Oh, but look, there's something fill and outline. Series 1, fill and outline. Fill. Oh yeah, looks pretty easy. Okay, I'm gonna record myself doing that and just see what happens. I may repent for doing this, but it seems like it shouldn't be too hard. So record my developer, record macro 4. Right click this, choose the fill to be kind of greenish or really green. Yeah. And why don't we make that, while we're at it, why don't we make the outline kind of orange? That's not much of an outline, but I feel like I've accomplished something. Stop recording. Let's go take a look at what that recorded. Oof, it's not pretty. Active chart, full series collection 1. We select it, and then it looks like we're changing the fill, the format color to be that. That's great. So I'm going to choose. That's how I get to that part of it. So we'll do the color right here. Now my chart is called CHRT dot. That gets me to my first series, full series collection 1. That's my series 1. I'll only have one series in it. And from that, we are changing the format fill. And in the fill, we are changing the 4 colors RGB to that great color. Or I'll just make it a doubles color. Remember, colors in Excel are a number between 1 and like 16 million something. So this is one of those 16 million colors. If I want to use the RGB property, I can kind of compose it with how much red, green, and blue I want to use to make up the image. But this will be kind of a nice dark red. Be great. Will it work? I don't know. My first time doing that. Control-Shift-C, type mismatch. Okay. Chart full series. So what did we have different? Active chart, full series collection. From there, we're saying format fill, format fill, format fill. And from there, we're saying 4 color. RGB. Let me go ahead and go back to exactly the way this is. I think that's not going to make a difference. Format fill, 4 color. Oh, did make a difference. RGB. Oh, it's RGB. I could put the number here because the results of this RGB is going to map that that color into the Excel color space. So I just need to leave the RGB on there, and I should be able to go to dark red. Control-Shift-C, and there's my chart. Good. Okay, I'd say let's format the chart some more, but I think the chart is formatted well enough. Next thing I'd like to do is I'd like to make this so that it goes into a better position. Right now they're stacking on top of each other. So let's make them go somewhere else. So I think where I'd like to put it is down just a little bit from the top. I don't want it right up against the top. I want a little bit of a margin in there. And so that's going to be my top. So let me come here and let me dim a variable called, let me make a constant called margin. And I'm going to set it equal to 10. I don't know what the units here. They're not pixels, because if I scale this, if I zoom in and out, it'll still kind of maintain that, even though it'll be more pixels that are showing. So it's some unit of measure that's relative to the worksheet. And I think when I create this the first time, data.select, I just need that. So after I build it, instead of setting the top to 100, I'm going to set the top equal to the margin. So now that should put that right up close to the top. The left is still going to be over here. We'll adjust that here in just a minute. Oops. Oh, Control-Shift-D would do that really quickly. So Control-Shift-C, yeah, apparently that's how much 10 is, that little bit there. Now, setting the left is going to be a little bit more difficult because I would really like it to go right up close to my data. That's going to be different every time. So any thoughts on how we're going to find out where to put that? What should I look for? I was just going to start snooping. What should I look at? What object should I look at to see if I can figure out a particular property? Don't be shy. It won't hurt to get it wrong. Say it again. Oh, the selected range. Yeah. The column that we already calculated. We calculated the last column. So that's a number, and we could use that to look at the column to see what its property is. Maybe it's got a right property. Let's go find out. So let me we can use that. I'm going to use cells. Oh, this will be great. So cells. Now, if I don't tell it, if I don't give it two indices, if I just give it one index, what does that one index mean? What if I said cell number 5? What cell is that? Turns out this is cell number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 16,000 something, 16,001, 16,002. They just numbered straight across. So because I'm looking at the first row, first index is going to equal the column that it's in. So cells 5, let me print this off. I could say row number 1, column number 5, or just for some variety, I'll just do cells 5. Dot, I was kind of hoping that would give me something to choose from. But I know that since I have this, if I have this thing that's called data that it knows is a range, I should be able to look at that one just to be able to see what the properties are. So range dot, and so the interpreter knows that's got to be a range, and so here are your range properties. I would love it if there's a right property that tells me where the right of that cell is. LMNOPQR, there we go. Range, replace, row, resize, no right. Oof. Maybe there's a left. Ah, there's a left. $621.75. That's the right order of magnitude, because we were somewhere at 600 was one of the ones you tried. We bumped it up to 800, so it's not terribly far off. So that gets me to the left of it. Oh, how can I get to the right? I think I heard it. Someone say it louder. Oh, there's a width property. So I could take the cells, the left, plus the width. Or I could look at the left of the next cell. Either way, I don't care. But I'm probably also going to want, I don't want it to be right up against the margin, right up against the edge. I want a little bit margin of there as well. So let's go ahead and do that. So we just let's set the left right here. Cells, but not 6, last column plus 1. Okay, I like it. Control Shift D, Control Shift C. Oh, I forgot to put the margin on it. Plus margin. All right. Well, we've got them adjusted now to go, the first one to go to a good place. But now, where do we want the next one to go? How are we going to make the next one go to a different place? The next one, I think I'd like to go right below it. Say it again. Ah, so we could look at the height of the one just before it. So let's do it this way. If it's the first one, if it's our first chart, let's put it right here. But if it's anything after the first chart, let's adjust it based on what the last chart, wherever the last chart was added. Okay. So here's where we're adjusting the top. Let's do this. How can I tell if it's my first chart, my first shape on the sheet? I think I can ask, I think there's a charts collection. And even though the charts collection won't let me move the chart around, it'll tell me how many charts there are. Do I have any charts in there? So active sheet, charts.count. Active sheet dot ACTIV SHET. Seems like it would know that's a sheet. We just dim S as a worksheet. So I can say S dot and see what's available. Oh, it's called chart objects. Didn't really want that variable. I just wanted to be able to get to here. So right now I've got 1, Control Shift C. Now I've got 2. So this will tell me how many chart objects I have. Okay, so if count of my chart objects is equal to 1, then we do this. Otherwise, it's got to be more. It can't be less. So it's got to be more. So else, oh, wait a minute. Why 1? It doesn't start at 0. It starts counting at 1. Because we've already added the chart, right? We've added 1 chart by the time we get here. And so if there's 1, that means it's our first one. Otherwise, it's something more than our first one. Now, if it's other than that, we're going to set the top to something else. Oh, the left is going to be the same thing, though. Anytime you look at a block like this and you say, I've got an if statement, I'm doing something, and else I'm doing something. If you have the same line in both of those, it doesn't belong in the if statement. Where does it belong? It's either right before it or right after it, right? Because I'm saying, listen, if the count is 1, we're doing this. Otherwise, we're doing this. We're doing that all the time. So I'm just going to put that line after my if statement. Right? It's always going to happen. If it's 1, we go to the top margin. Oof. If it's not, this code is going to get a little bit long. I'm going to make another shape object to keep track of what my last added shape was. So I've got shape, and I'm going to put my last shape. I guess I'll just call it last shape. And if that happens, so if I get here, I got to find out what the last shape is. So I'm going to set last shape equal to my shapes collection, active sheet, dot shapes. Now it's a collection, so I can refer to it by its number. And so which number do I want? I want however many there are. So in parentheses, dot count. So if there's only one, set it to the top. If there's more than one, we got to find out, we want to actually bind on to the last sheet that we added. And I know it's kind of a long line, but however many sheets there are is what this says. And we want the sheet that is however many sheets there are. That's the last one. Oh, this will be the one. No, it doesn't start at 0. This will be the one that we just barely added. So we want the one before that. Oh, this isn't the last chart. This is the penultimate shape. It's the second to the last chart. And you're right, we don't want to bind onto that one. We want to bind onto the one before that, -1. Penultimate just means next to the last. My very favorite word in the English language is the one that refers to the one just before the next to the last. Does anyone know what that word is? There's a word that means the one before the next to the last, and it's anti-penultimate. Unfortunately, we don't have a reason to refer to the anti-penultimate shape, but we do have to refer to the penultimate shape. All right, so now our penultimate shape, we're bound onto that one. And so I want the top of this to be, the top of the one we just added, to be the top of the penultimate shape plus the height of the penultimate shape plus the margin. Whoops, not top, height. In the same way that a cell has a left and it has a width, but no right property, there's no bottom property to a shape. It's got a top and a height, and we can use that to figure out what the bottom of it is. I think that's going to do it. Whew. Man, I've written a lot of code. I haven't saved. I'm going to save. Control-Shift-C. Oh, look at that. The problem is it's writing the same one each time. So I think after I'm done doing all of that, I'm just going to select the next cell down. ACTIBE cell dot offset 1 row 0 columns dot select. So that's just going to say whatever cell is active, refer to the cell just below it, and then select that cell. So now if I clear these off, Control-Shift-C, resident population under 5%, 18. Oops. Pretty happy with that. Let's go smaller. In all these great different charts, Control-D. Oh, don't delete anything. Just zoom back in. Oh, that's a little bit of a problem. I was all the way at the top, and so it built one chart for here. That's no good. We probably should check to see if our row, let's go ahead and fix that. So if our row data is less than 3, we need to set it to 3. Data row. If data row is less than 3, then data row equals 3. So now if I run that on the first one, oh. And we probably actually want to select that cell as well. Or down here, instead of offsetting, let's just refer to that cell. So cells, data row, +1, and whatever the active column is, I don't care what it is. It's just, well, I'll set it to the first column. So now if I run this Control-Shift-C, even if I was on the very top, it'll put me to the right data. Ooh. That was unexpected. You're getting that same behavior? Anyone that's following along? Skipping this one? I have no idea why that's happening. Fortunately, we've got like 15 minutes to figure it out. Not quite 15 minutes. We've got one more thing to do, really. Wow. Control-Shift-C. Let me see how many charts we've got at this point. We should have just one. All right, I think I'm going to step through this next time. I'm going to run right to here. And Control. Control-Shift-C. Okay, we set the color. It's not 1. Let's ask for the name. Let's ask for the top of that penultimate shape. Penultimate shape should be the same height as the margin, so it should be 10. Top. No, it's like reading the top of this one. So what did I do? I'm going to set the, just make sure I'm talking about the right one. I'm going to set the title of that. So the penultimate shape dot chart title dot. Oops. We just print the chart title. Penultimate shape dot chart. '65 and older. Yeah. Wow. Why is it getting to that one? Anyone see why it's getting to that one? You guys are bright. I bet you can see it. It's not like an exercise I planned. I really think it should be referring to the other one. Oh, that's exactly what it's doing. It is counting. That's right, because the total number of shapes includes that one. Okay. So I've got to, I think I can refer to this by its chart object. So instead of shapes, I think a chart object itself has, I can see chart objects dot count. There should be 2 here. I think it has the top, property as well. So let's look for number 1 dot top. Yeah, so it's got a top as well. So instead of looking at the shapes, let's use the chart objects. Penultimate shape is out of all the chart objects dot count. I think that'll be okay. Probably because I'm not allowed to bind onto this. This needs to be probably needs to be a chart object as well. So let's build this as a chart object instead of a shape. There we go. Okay, so I just need to make that a chart object so that we are only thinking about the shapes that have charts. And then we're referring to that is in our collection that we're dealing with. So the last thing I'd like to do here is I'd like to say after a preset number of charts, I would like to stop going down. I'd like to move over one and then go down from there again. In fact, I'd kind of like it to be just based on the data, like when I get past the end of the data. So don't keep putting charts down here. When I get past the end of the data, start putting charts off to the right. Ooh. All right, so if the top that I've calculated is greater than the end of my data, let's go ahead and get that figured out. So we've got last call. Let's make a last row. Let's dim our last row as a long. And we'll calculate the last row when we're calculating the last column. Our last row is cells rows.count, column 1, dot end XL up, dot row. And I'm actually more interested in the next row after that when we add one onto it. I know it says last row, but this will be the row below the last row. So if when I'm calculating the top is below the top of my last row, I don't want to put the chart there. I want to put it somewhere else. So let's go ahead and put that in here. So let's see. The left is going to get adjusted. I think I'm just going to write an if statement around this whole thing. Have this in. Not quite sure exactly how I want to structure this if statement, but we'll get there here shortly. So if the top, actually, I think I'm going to do it inside here. If it's our first one, just put it there. Otherwise, let's check to see where we're headed. So we've got the penultimate shape. I think I want to, so this is the expression that figures out my new top. Oh, you know what? I think I'll go ahead and set it there, and then I'll just move it. I'll move it if we need to. Just make the code a little bit easier. If shp.top is greater than last row dot top, it's too low. Oops. Then and if. Then what do we want it to do? We want to go right back to the top. So we want our top to be the margin. And our left is going to be something different. Oof. So our left, if that's not the case, we're going to put the left right where we were putting it before. Otherwise, we're going to put the left. I mean, that's definitely where we want the left to go if it's our first one. In fact, I think rather than putting this, looking at that cell to put it here, I just want to match the penultimate shape. So let's set that equal to the left of the penultimate shape, just the one above it. Put it in the same left as the one above it. And this one is going to go where? What are we going to set the left to on this one? if we set it to the left of my last shape, it'll go right on top of the one that's in that column. It will have gone up to the top, but I'm going to the same left. I just wanted to move it over. So I think I want that plus my margin, plus the width of my penultimate shape, which will be the same shape as, well, I'll do that one, doing plus the width. So if I get to the situation where I'm trying to put it below my data, then I'm going to go to the top and move over. I think that'll do it. I'm not positive, but let's give it a shot. Zoom out a bit. Apparently there's no data type called log. Who knew? Oh, last row is a number. So this needs to be cells. Row number, last row, column number 1, dot top. Okay, so our first one goes in. Control-Shift-C. Next one goes in. This one should go in okay. And now we should have that situation where it's lower than we want. So that's, I don't know we need that many charts, but that's a pretty decent algorithm. So whatever line we want, make the chart, and it'll build them all the same size in the location that we want them. Excellent. Questions? Yeah. Oh yeah, I did that kind of quickly. No, the if statement's a little bit involved, but it's not terrible. We're nested only 2 levels. And you should, if you're nesting more than 2 levels, time to think, is there a better way to do it? Nesting 2 levels is okay. And it would probably make sense to put some comments in there. Okay, that's working with charts. And the big thing to think about charts is that it's not especially intuitive, is that charts don't go on the form itself. Charts go, or don't go onto the sheet itself, they go into a shape. The shape is what you use to adjust the position and the size. We didn't change the size, did we? We changed the size. They have a width and a height property. You change the size of the shape, and the chart will automatically fill the size of the shape. If you want to manipulate properties of the chart, then you have to get to the chart object. All right, thanks for coming. Have a great weekend, and I will see you on Monday. Class dismissed. You're too kind. You're too kind.